Okay, so we are looking at the essence of a hidden garden. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. A spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Solomon here paints a picture of a groom who is totally in love with his bride. He takes pleasure in his bride. He takes pleasure in her purity and in her beauty that she presents to him as her husband. Solomon says of his bride that she is his sister, his bride. What does it mean to be his sister? The Hebrew word here is achoti, and achoti means my sister. In this context, this is a woman or a female that is so close to him, that he is so close to, that she is like his next of kin, that she is like an extension of himself, an extension of who he is. If you see him, you see her, and if you see her, you see him. She is when Chava was brought to Adam, he said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." When Solomon looks at his wife, he says that she's his sister, that she is even so close to him that he looks at her as if she's blood of his blood, that she is an extension of who he is. What does it mean to be his bride? The Hebrew word for bride is kala, and that means a young woman or a young wife. At the time of Solomon, at the time of writing this, women were often married young at the age of 15. And so when we're looking at it today, a kala might be an older wife, an older woman, but this has the idea of this being his wife of his youth. It says here that the root word of kala is kalal. And that word kalal means to be perfect or to complete or to put a crown upon. So when we're thinking about the kala or the bride, she is a crowning perfection to her husband. We can see this in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 12 verse 4 says, "An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who shames him is like rottenness to his bones." An excellent wife is this crown of jewels that is upon her husband's head. She is grace from the Most High to her husband. We also see in the verse from Song of Solomon the idea of exclusivity of the bride to the bridegroom. In fact, this is repeated 3 times. It's said that she is a garden enclosed. It says that she is a spring shut up. It says that she is a fountain that is sealed. Let's look at each of these metaphors in some more detail. A garden enclosed or locked, gan na'ul. A gan is a garden, and this is the same word that is used to describe the garden that Yahweh created for his special creation, mankind, in Genesis. And we see how the garden in Genesis was full of life. It was well watered and it was beautiful. It's interesting. It says that the water was present in the garden. There were streams, right? There was 3 rivers, and it was a beautiful place. Gardens in ancient Israel was customary both for normal everyday families and for royal households. The garden would supplement the mostly carbohydrate diet of barley and wheat and lentils that came from the field, with lush vegetables like cucumbers and watermelons and onions and leeks and garlic. Gardens would have multiple vegetables and fruits and fruit trees, but they required a lot of water. They required irrigation, and they required watering from wells and cisterns and streams and tapping into underground water beds. Women normally tended to the gardens in ancient Israel, and they were known for their beauty and for their orderliness. The groom calls his bride an enclosed garden. So this garden is a place that is fruitful It's abundant. It's beautiful, but it's also enclosed. It's also locked. It's a garden that is hidden from the rest of the world. So no one can enjoy the fruits of this garden except for the one that it is open to, and that is the groom. Let's look at some of the fruits of this garden. So we're going to go down a couple more verses. Song of Solomon 4, verses 13 through 16 says, "Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with pleasant fruits, camphire and spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon." The bride says, "Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south. Blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits." So we can see how the wife of the groom, how she has all of these beautiful fruits, all of these fragrant fruits. I have here a verse from Psalm 45. It says, "All thy garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia out of the ivory palaces, whereby they have made thee glad." Now, this is talking about how fragrant a king smells upon his wedding day. And we can see here that the same fruits as that verse is found here, and the same spices and the same beautiful aromas and smells and fragrances are found in this garden. Imagine walking through this garden and looking at the orchards of pomegranates and looking at all the pleasant fruits, and imagine smelling all of these fine aromatic spices and all of the waters. Imagine the sound of the waters, a well of living waters, a fountain of gardens. This is the bride. This is the Eshek Hayil. This is the Ezer Kenegdo of the man. Pomegranates, by the way, are one of the 7 fruits of the land of Israel, and they're associated with abundance and fertility and prosperity. And so we can see how this woman, this bride, is ground, really. The garden is really a ground or a place for the man to plant his seed, and for her womb, her beitin, her racham, her womb to produce fruit. It is a protective chamber for his future generation. So when he's looking at his bride, he's not just looking at her, but he's looking at his future. He's looking at his children and his grandchildren and his future generations. And this is the woman that is going to bring forth the fruit. She is the garden. So I already alluded to the fact that gardens needed water, and we saw this in the verses. But Solomon says that his wife is a spring shut up, a gal na'ul. The Hebrew word for gal means heaps. It's a heap of water. It's like a wave. His wife is like a wave of living water that is locked away from everyone else except him. The word gall, it carries with it this connotation of heaping up, and I alluded to that earlier when I talked about the Garden of Eden, the Gan Eden, and how it says there in Genesis 2 verse 6, you can look this up later, how the water in the Garden of Eden, there was a mist that would come up and it would bubble up and it would water the garden. It would water the whole earth. And so the woman, she's the garden, but she's also the water of the garden. It said here, I'm going to go back. It says that she is a fountain of gardens. She's a well of living waters. So she's both the water and the garden. There is no room for there to be a drought. There is no room for there not to be fruit coming forth. When we think about waters in ancient Israel, we think about the fact that especially if you was in the highlands of Israel, you really had to rely upon wells and cisterns and accessing water in different ways. You had the rain in a rainy season, and you had to collect that water. You had to preserve that water. Water was valuable. It's valuable even to this day. We see that when waters are polluted, there's a lot of sicknesses and there's a lot of diseases and there's a lot of problems. And we're even experiencing droughts, and you could see how a drought can even affect us to this day. And so whenever you had water, you protected the water. You protected it. So if you had a well, you would cover it. If you had a cistern, you would cover it to protect it from being polluted. And you would also protect it and guard it from others. And we could see this in the stories of Abraham in the Torah, and how he had different various issues about wells. And we could see this with Isaac and the 7 wells, right? We could see that even important events would occur at wells of water. And so there was reasons that you would cover it, or that you would protect it, that you would put your mark on it and say, okay, this is my water, this is my well. It's kind of interesting if we look in 2 Chronicles 32 verses 1-5, that when the Assyrians tried to invade Jerusalem, again, this is 2 Chronicles 32 verses 1-5, that Hezekiah, he rebuilt the wall around Jerusalem. So he built and locked Jerusalem off. That word, not old, right? He rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, but he also did something interesting. He stopped up, or he diverted or hid the springs that went out from the city, because they didn't want the Assyrian army that was coming up to try to fight them to be able to benefit from their water. And so if we are looking at ourselves as being this fruitful spring of our husbands, when we aren't married and when we're waiting for the Most High to reveal who our husbands are, and even if we aren't going to have a physical husband, we recognize that our spring is not for everyone. We recognize that there's going to be these Assyrians, right? these enemies, right, that are going to try to come up, and they're going to look a certain kind of way, and they're going to talk a certain kind of way, and they're going to have certain kind of things to say to us. But our spring is locked up. It's hidden from them. They cannot partake of what does not belong to them. They cannot come and take another man's water source, right? A spring shut up is a bride who has boundaries. She has boundaries, and those boundaries make her husband's. A fountain sealed. Mayan, Hatum. Mayan Hatum. The word for spring and for fountain are different. The word for spring was a heap of waters or a wave. The word for fountain here, it's a source of living waters, like waters from a spring or from a well. And a well is something that you literally had to dig into the earth and reach the water table. The word sealed here, hatum, again, I apologize. This is a live broadcast, so I'm not going to be able to go back and change the first word here. That should be mayan, not mayam, but with an N at the end, or a noon. But the word hatum, we're going to move on to the word hatum, or sealed, has a deep meaning. And it has the meaning of a king placing his seal or his name on a decree. So when a king puts his name on something, when he establishes something, that's going to happen. And we can see this illustrated in 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 8. So it's him putting his name or his mark on something. But it also means stopping something up or closing something off. And we can see how in Israel, and I spoke about this before, that water was scarce. And so, you will put your name on or your seal on your water source. You would make sure that everybody knew that this water source was yours, because there would be people that might come up and try to take it over and try to steal it. So a well had with it the connotation of exclusivity. So a bride is a woman who has the seal or mark of her bridegroom. She is exclusively his. And this exclusivity doesn't start at the marriage. The exclusivity starts even before the marriage. And so this isn't a message of condemnation to anyone, but a message of, if you are in a relationship with someone who this isn't your husband, think about your emotional connection to this person, and think about, are you giving what belongs to another man? Are you giving that to this man? Is this man going to be your husband? Is this man going to be the bridegroom for the bride? So when we enter into relationships, we have to look at them from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a resource standpoint, and we have to make sure that we are not giving to anyone what doesn't belong to them. And in this society, in ancient Israel, people have fathers who would, kind of stand on guard, and the men would come through the father, and there'd be a lot of, and the mother as well. The family structure was a lot more solid at that time, and so there'd be a lot of talk going on, and a lot of trying, and a lot of filtering going on. And so we kind of live in a society where the man just comes to the woman and talks to the woman. And so a lot of times the woman has to put up these guards and these filters, and she has to look at this situation and this man, and she has to be she has to be the guard over her body, and over her mind, and over her resources, and over her thoughts, so that she doesn't, give inordinately to someone that isn't her husband. Let's look at the hidden garden versus the public garden. Proverbs 5, I recommend everyone read the whole chapter of Proverbs 5. We're just going to look at Proverbs 5 verses 15 through 20, which talks about the strange woman. And it talks, and this is a father talking to his son and telling his son to stay away from the strange woman. Proverbs 5 says, "Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Should your springs overflow in the streets, your streams of water in the public squares? Let them be yours alone, never to be shared with strangers. May your fountain be blessed, and may you rejoice in the wife of your youth. A loving doe, a graceful deer, may her breast satisfy you always. May you be intoxicated with her love. Why, my son, be intoxicated with another man's wife? Why embrace the bosom of a wayward woman, or of a strange woman?" And so we can see here that a strange woman, her produce, her waters, her resources, her body can be used for anyone. But a hidden garden, the Hebrew woman, the hidden garden, is reserved for her husband all the time. From the time that she's born until the time that she passes away. If you are a Hebrew woman, married or single, you are a garden enclosed. You are a spring shut up, and you are a fountain that is sealed. If you are a single woman, I would really like you to take heed to this wisdom and recognize that you are the Ezer Kenegdo of Yahweh right now. The Ezer Kenegdo of Yahweh. And that if the Most High has for you to be married, that you will be the Ezer Kenegdo of your bridegroom. And so you, at this time, you have to guard your thoughts and guard your emotions and guard your resources. This isn't just talking about sexuality, but it's talking about your thoughts and your emotions. We must not jump the gun, so to speak, and enter into emotional attachments with men who aren't our future husband. We have to be wise and understanding, or we can bring baggage into our relationship. Baggage might be weeds in the garden, right? That our husbands have to help tear up, And so we have to make sure that our gardens are enclosed, that we're not allowing people to come in and mess up and run amok and pollute our waters. If you're a married woman, recognize that you are this hidden garden to your husband, that you are this spring that's shut off for your husband, that you are this sealed fountain with your husband's name on it. And so this means that we are exclusive to our husbands, and that adultery shouldn't be found within us. And this adultery, it's not even always a sexual adultery, but it could be an emotional adultery. It could be a mental adultery. If you are a young girl that's watching this video, I really encourage you to focus on your relationship with Yahweh. Focus on your relationship with Yahweh and grow in relationship with him. And just really look at yourself as being this beautiful diadem, this beautiful crown, a jewel that is for your husband. And guard yourself. There's going to be a lot of men who are going to want to engage in a relationship with you, and that you are reserved. There's a big reserve sign on you. Remember that. And so when men are trying to come and approach you, there's a guard that should be put up. Just because someone compliments you, that shouldn't just make you happy. Just because someone wants to talk to you, that's not an honor. The question is this my husband? And if this is my husband, then okay. But if it's not my husband, I'm the Most High's, and I need to be focused on him. Let's end this by thinking about Israel. Israel is the garden enclosed. She's the spring shut up, and she's the fountain sealed of Yahweh. She is his. This is an exclusive agreement, an exclusive relationship. Yahweh said to us as his people that he is Yahweh or Elohim, and that we should have no other gods, no other mighty ones beside him. He is all that we need. And so when we're looking at us as being the people of Israel, we can see how he demands this exclusive relationship. And so we can take, he gives us these earthly relationships so that we can kind of have a better understanding of our spiritual relationship with him. There's a lot more that I could say about this. And, we have a lot more, we have a lot of time that we can say everything. So if you have any comments, you could put them in the comment section. You can send me an email at directkad.oneway@gmail.com. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You could check out our website, directkad.com. There should be plenty more episodes in this series for women, other episodes for women. We also have weekly midrashes and various studies for everyone in the faith. Yah bless. Hallelujah.